Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to The Right Mindset. Today, we are speaking with Paulo Pérez, or what'd you say, Paz? You said I can
Pap.
say
Pap is my
Pap,
nickname.
Mr. Pap of not the Pap smear. That is a whole different. He is an author. He did not sneak his way into medical school for the nickname Pat. I'm
Not yet.
accurate with that, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
They're my initials. So Paulo Andres Pérez. The
Oh,
P, really, the P. Yeah. So
yeah.
I've had it since like elementary school.
Your name? You've had it. I think you had it before elementary
My
school.
nickname. So
Oh, the
actually, the
nickname.
editor on my movie on the Human Supremacist, he gave me that nickname. I've resurrected it. I didn't really take it to college. Actually, that was one of my big regrets. I didn't take it to ASU. But then after that, when I went to LA, I was like, you know what? I gotta resurrect it. The
Interesting.
people that get to know me, the fortunate ones, they get to call me Pap.
See,
So.
my nickname came after I was the front of a human centipede. And they were like, we should just call you Thomas for short. And I was like, that's perfect. I don't like to talk about the experience, but the name was great, you know.
It's a great name. Maybe the experience, Human Centipede, not so great, but
No, yeah, it wasn't that bad for me. I'll be honest. I got to eat, you
yeah,
know.
the front's okay. I
Yeah, the
think it's the
front.
middle. Any of the ones in the middle.
Yeah, every middle spot is definitely actually, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
The second position is better than, say, the sixth position in the middle. You know what I'm saying? Because they
Why
have
is
to go.
that?
Well, because the first position, well, maybe not, because the number two is getting like the thickest version of the remains, right? And then like
Oh,
number
that's a good
six
point.
is getting most of the juice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's probably less human waste by the end. I guess it's a good way of putting it.
Yeah,
It kind
the
of gets
last one, not so
cleaned
much.
out every time, every digestive system. So maybe the very end, maybe that's the way to go.
That yeah, right. But I mean, who gets to tell the real story though? You know, like the one in the front is like, yeah, I wasn't the one in the middle. You know, like they got, you know what I'm saying? Like their faces are
Eat or
messed
be
up.
eaten, I guess, is the way, or both, depending on where you are. So
I
I,
mean, if you
I
had to
hope
choose,
I'm never in that circumstance, but if it happens, then I guess I'll choose there, or I guess it's chosen for you at that point.
yeah, it depends. It depends. What if they're like nice? They're like, hey, listen, Pap, where do you want to go? You know, you want
Hmm.
the front, the back, or the middle? How you want
I'm
to do
going
this?
front. I'm going front. I'm going front, and I think you can breathe a little better.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. You don't have to worry. Yeah,
and you can see. You don't have you can like get a better line of vision.
yep,
That's
yep, yep.
pretty visual. So I mean, that's why I
The
got.
I guess the pain would be like no one listening when you're like, can we go? Can we move forward a little bit?
When
You
you
know,
speak,
everyone's like,
that's a big thing too. Yeah, I
yeah, no,
mean,
it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. So speaking of the human centipede, you're an author, which means you're attached to your career. You're attached to these creative endeavors. You're stuck in a world that you can't get off of. You know, but you're the head of the centipede when it comes to your author career. I'm assuming.
that's I think when you're a novelist, you're the whole centipede.
I
Now,
mean, yeah, you do
in
take
the
the.
now there are other people. There are some unsung heroes for sure. The graphic designer, book cover,
Mhm.
an editor, and so on and so forth, and certainly beta readers and all those kind of people.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when it comes to a way more collaborative, just a larger team effort in cinema, that one you're one piece of the centipede. I'll say there. But at the same time, as a director, you're also the surgeon. So
Well, it depends. It depends how you look at it, because a director could be hired by a producer, and the producer could be like, "I want it this way," and the director's like, "Well, I'm the director," and they're like, "Yeah, but I'm the money." And then the director's like, "But I think we should film it this way," and the producer's like, "But my cousin needs to be in this film, and I want a close up on him." And then you're like, "No," and then they're like, "But I just gave you $40 million," and then the director's like, "I think the close up would be good. I think it would look good."
yeah, you're totally right. But in the circumstance of the Human Supremacist, I was a producer as well. So I mean, I got to maintain way more creative control.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I get to decide where the operation room is, where all that kind of things. And
You
now
get to do it. Yeah.
there's beauty to it. And there's a disaster in it of not
Now,
having anybody to tell you what to do.
do you think the director is in control when it comes to film, or are they one part of a bigger system?
It certainly depends on the nature of the project. Generally speaking, the larger the project is, the more involved the producers are going to be, the studio, so on and so forth. Generally, when you're going to work more in the independent space, and also it depends, were you the writer in it? Are you also a producer? Are you also an actor? So on and so forth. Generally speaking, I think the best of any movie is when the director has more influence. If it's a kind of director for hire, you don't even really notice that the director can be a little bit invisible, whereas ones
So
where,
what
hey,
you're
they were the
saying,
writer, they're produced. Sorry, excuse me.
oh, so the best scenario is where it's the director's show, right? Like they're running everything and no one really has say. It's whatever it's the director's vision.
Yeah, I mean, there's a director's bias in me, of course, but it's kind of the classic "too many cooks in the kitchen" when you get a little committee. Now, there are certain in television, it's different, where the showrunner, it's typically a writer, but an executive producer
Tell me about this.
is the one really guiding it through.
Yeah.
But cinema is totally different in that process, where the director is really the one with way more influence. Television is way more writer centered. Theater is more actor centered. And
so like when Steven Spielberg hires a cinematographer, or maybe they hire a director of photography and a cameraman, instead of going both. Not that I know this industry, but let's say they do that. They expect those people to have no say. Steven Spielberg's like, this is the shot I want. I didn't hire you for your brain. I hired you to hold the camera and you to put in the shot that I demand. Like they're not expecting feedback from them, right?
I mean, it totally depends on the relationship. Ideally, and this is something I told Alex, one of the producers on the Human Supremacist, it's something that really actually drew her into the project. That in my case, I wanted somebody that was more talented than me on every front. Now, it doesn't mean that I have no talent, but I'm saying the director of photography, so Jake Alexander, I feel like he's a better DP than I am. Doesn't mean I have no DP abilities. I definitely do. I have a vision, I have an eye, but you want somebody that's really going to bring the most out of it and get the best out of you and kind of cover your weak spots too, right? There's a reason. I feel like one of my strengths is titles. So I don't need, if I were to have a co-writer, I didn't on the Human Supremacist. I don't need somebody whose strength is at titles. I got that. I got titles. Don't you worry about titles. That. Yeah. But if they're gonna cover a weakness of mine, then that's great. Let's go for it.
Now,
that's the way I kind of see it.
What? Go ahead.
That's the way I kind of see it. Now there are some people where it's like, I just have this thing, you need to do it, and
do it my way or get off the set. I didn't hire you to do I hired you to. You're just my hands, right? Like that's the best way to be a director, right? Is to just treat people like things, like they just have their responsibilities. I am the god, right? Like it's like, right? Or because you don't want it to be collaborative. You don't want them to be like, oh, you think maybe we could, I don't know, film it this way, and you're like, that's not how I envisioned it. And they're like, oh, but have you ever seen a film this way? And you're like, I don't care. I didn't hire you for that. I hired you. I want a static shot. And then we're just, I mean, maybe a dolly movement or something. I don't know, something generic. And they're like, oh, but I went to school for cinematography. And you're like, but I am the director.
And there is something to it, right? You can't, for a football team, you don't need 52 quarterbac's, right? You need one quarterback.
Right. But what's the quarterback's real job?
You need that. You need your receivers and all. But if you're completely just committed to one vision, like you won't move at all, that can be excellent. Absolutely. It could also be terrible, but you'll just get that vision. I think in the case of being collaborative, you can get something that you never could have imagined. Pointing case is with the actresses, the big three, as I call them. Rachel for the Human Supremacist, Rachel, Annie, and Zoe. And they were doing things that I didn't possibly write in the script. I couldn't have thought of. And it's just, they took my vision, they did listen, and then they added way more to it. And then they made me and the rest of us look great. It's like, wow, man, the way you directed them. It's like, a lot of the times it was just them absolutely listening. And for one, the script, I think that definitely was a great guide. It's a great blueprint. But also they just took it and went off, and they made it better than if I just said, only do the script, just follow every word. If it says walk to the left, walk to the left. But sometimes I'll stumble a little bit. I'll fall off the rock, something like that.
Oh, you were writing a stage play.
Those little things.
You were writing a stage play, not a film.
No, I mean the human.
Oh, in the script it said walk left, like walk left through the
Sometimes it
door.
isn't as specific as go over there. Other times it's a little open ended
It says
in terms
scratch
of
his
the
nose.
actors. Yeah, that one. No, I never put don't blink or anything like that. But
Was
then
that
yes,
a parenthetical or was it in the action?
it's a mix. It's a mix. But then you notice really in the editing that there are some times Evan was big on this. So we'd cut. I mean, I can't even count the amount of shots where it's if we went one frame more, the actor would have blinked. And it's just kind of one of those little editing hacks that it adds a little.
Yeah.
There's some times where you want him to blink and it adds something. There's not a time where whether it's for intimidation or just to get the drama out of it or make them even feel a little more somber that you don't want them to blink.
Now, what would you write in a parenthetical when you're writing a screenplay?
The parenthetical, it could be something like sarcastically.
So what is it you're writing though? Like, what is the purpose of what you write in the parenthetical? Is it action based?
Yes, it's action based, and just to give it a little more clarification of how that should be delivered, and really in a more general.
Well, sarcastically isn't action based though, right? If I remember, that's internal. Is that an emotional based?
It's internal. Now that is not one that, in this case, or the Human Supremacist that I wrote. But if if something is peculiar, like okay, during this monologue you should be crying, I put parenthetical crying. Whereas the rest of it, where hey, she has 5 lines in a row. What's different about this one? Oh, she's crying.
Interesting. Interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Who would you say is the most important person on a set?
any artist will say him or herself. No, the deeper you get into it, I think you realize it's just everybody's a big puzzle piece. Mm-hmm. And we did a private screening in Baltimore in Harbor East. A great movie. They're wonderful there. They put the then poster up there digitally. It was wonderful. They bent over backwards. So it was an incredible experience with my friends and special fans. Nice. To go and see it. But you even realize that somebody who wasn't even involved in the project, at least until the literally very end, the projectionist, they can make your movie wonderful. They can make it terrible, right? If they mess up the audio levels, if they have the incorrect brightness, if they have the incorrect aspect ratio, literally the size of the screen, which we did a test screening. It was like, oh, hey, the head's chopped off. Can you fix that?
That wasn't in the script.
Yeah, that wasn't in the script. You realize that even the projectionist is part of the team. So they're all everybody plays their part. So
everyone is equally as important.
There's a classic saying for actors, right? There are no small parts. There are only small actors. So
small people.
There's no small art, just small artists.
Small artists. What if they're a little person?
They can be little artists.
They are littler artists.
Littler artists, but the art itself is still massive.
All right. Now, so you write screenplays and novels? Is this what I'm?
Yeah. So I got an upcoming novel. It's in the works. Hopefully, right around this time next year, it is done artistically, and it's going to be certainly something in the PAP vein. If you know me, and really once you do a deep analysis of the Human Supremacist, which should come out January 3rd is the earliest it can come out.
Right, well, this will be way out. January 3rd will be gone. This airs. We're pre-filming this.
I know. So it's gonna when people get to it, they'll.
It's not. By the way, interviewing a tidbit of knowledge here. Don't date your interviews. So when you say it comes out X date, you're dating your interview, which makes the interview poor because you can't reuse it. Because now you have to be like, well, January 2025, right? And now if we watch this video, say 5 years in the future, now it's an old interview, so it doesn't have a new taste. Now, if it's if you just say January 1st, now we don't know what year it is, right? So like by dating it, it actually corrupts the interview. So that's a thing they teach you in PR. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, but they're gonna love us so much that people are gonna be watching this. It doesn't matter. We're
talking
about centipedes. We're talking about
Yeah, but what I'm
No,
saying is
I
in
get you.
PR, they teach you not to date your or pitch your things. Like when you do that, it's like, oh, I'm here for. I had this one guy, this one interview, I couldn't
Yeah.
even post it. He sat down and he took out a book and he just started reading from the top of the book his stuff. He goes, oh, on this date I have this, and by the way, I'm into this, and oh, I did this thing. I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm
Oh,
letting
well,
people know I do these things.
I just threw away my book. I was gonna do that. So.
Excellent. And but I told I was like, look, the show is for entertainment. We got to learn or whatever the case. You're not here to. I'm not here to promote your stuff. And he goes, well, why am I here then? I go, because I thought you'd be entertaining.
Yeah.
So I killed him. He became the last person in the centipede, the human centipede. So let's get into your writing a little bit. Let's talk about your writing, but we're not like, hey, check out my book. Let's talk about you as an author, because
Yeah.
the purpose of this show is literally to reinvigorate or inspire the aspiring authors out there, and learn that everybody has a different process. There's no one way fits all. And when we hear through the lens of other authors, whether it be screenwriting or novels, it gives them the chance to sort of go, oh, okay, maybe I'm not too different, or maybe it's all right that I'm different. So let's go through it. Let's talk about it. How do you obviously you approach novels different than screenplays, but how do you approach your novels? And let's keep it to section so we could have a dialogue. I usually ask this question, then they just go on, and I'm just like, let's start, let's start with the first thing. How do you approach your novels? Let's do it.
First of all, it's got to be a great concept. I'm more the high concept type in general.
What makes it a great concept?
Mediums that you could, in one sentence, the log line, that it's in and of itself interesting.
Okay.
That people should be like, oh, tell me more, kind of thing. Those are the ones.
So are you saying when you come up with an idea, it's a great idea is other people are interested, and it's less about what I'm interested in writing. It's more about, for you, I'm just saying, like, again, everyone's different. So when you write, you're like, what sells, what would people buy? And it's less about what you're trying to say.
Well, there's a mix. There's, of course, the strategy of going for completely playing for the market, but I don't find that to be entirely fulfilling. If I'm writing something that is great for the market, awesome. But I feel like
it's great for the market.
Oh, there are always trends. You see what's going off the shelves, what's going off in Blockbuster.
So you have a 50 Shades of Grey book, is what you're saying.
Not necessarily, but I think at the end of the day, you just have to be, no matter what work of art, you have to be entirely passionate about it. If you don't have that passion, then that's going to bleed through the screen or the page. Anybody can tell if you're phoning it in. If you don't have that heart, no matter what, if I don't like a movie, if I don't like a novel, whatever it may be, I can 100% tell you that I can notice heart, and I'll always respect that. I can even tell you who was putting their heart in it. Oh yeah, it was that actress was putting her heart in it. That screenwriter was. The director wasn't, but you could tell. I'm like, that person, maybe the performance was weak, but you can say that person really cared about the work.
Yeah. So now, do they snap when they perform?
I do. They usually don't, but I'm a big snapper.
I do that all the time, by the way. Like when I'm talking, I'm like, hey, listen, because it's a speaking thing. It gets people's attention.
Yeah.
Can you do the triple snap?
No.
You start on your pinky? No. All right.
I can do that.
All right, so you need a log line that you're passionate. It's a story you're passionate about, but you want people to be like, hey, that's a good story.
Yeah, and then before I even finish a draft, the first draft, I have to have a strong
like beer?
No, a draft of a writing draft.
Oh, all right.
Also, more of a Four Loko type.
Nice.
Than a beer. But anyway, especially the original formula.
Excellent. Hey, look, I like true sugar Coke. All right.
If I don't have a good title, if I don't have a strong title by the end of the first draft, I will not continue. I'm a title guy. I will I will watch a movie. I'll certainly at least consider a movie because of its title. I will not watch a movie, or it'll be a little mountain for me to climb to get to like a movie if it has an underwhelming title.
Oh, so you're
I also love
primarily a
names.
screenwriter. You're primarily a screenwriter that you're starting to write a book.
Yes, yeah.
All right.
But I've always had the writing background. I think if you really love writing and you commit yourself to it and you train across domains, you could be good at anything. I think Shakespeare would have been a great song lyricist. I think he would have been a great screenwriter.
Yeah.
He could have done it all, among others.
Excellent mechanic, maybe a surgeon.
I don't know about that. Well, let's think maybe writing surgeries, the procedure. Maybe great at that. But
it'd be like two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene from ancient grudge to new mutiny. Hand me the wrench, please.
Exactly.
I don't know Shakespeare, but so Romeo and Juliet. All right, so you need a log line. You need to be passionate about it. Now, after you write your first draft, if you can't come up with a title for the book, you just throw it out.
It has to, but I always get one. So it has so far been good.
You always get that title. You're the title guy.
I'm a title guy. And
what makes a great title? What makes a great title? Give us the secret.
The secret. This is very valuable right here.
Yeah, I know. That's why people
you can go with the catchy thing. I'll tell you in cinema is a one-word title. Now I think you got to earn the one word,
like dildo.
Sure. That is a strong. That says a lot about the movie. I'll tell you that.
Right? Yeah, and then it's a romance.
That's one of the keys to a title. That it should tell you, ideally, the tone, the conflict, the direction it's going for. I think one of the best titles of any movie is Snakes on a Plane.
Oh, snake, because it's literally snakes on a plane.
It tells you, all right, it tells you the tone, it tells you the premise. Boom, right there. It's catchy. Snakes on a plane. Boom.
Snakes on a plane.
With the shotgun.
Listen, that's the way to do it. You need snakes on a plane, or what's the point?
There you go. There's the problem. There's the plot. There's the tone. Now they don't all have to be quite that direct with it, but at the end of the day, I think just something being catchy. If it can be original, all the better. And then from there, you kind of just know when you got something.
Oh yeah.
When you got literally the best way I can even explain it is if you just had a list of titles, 100 titles, whether real or not, and you just say, wait, that one, I want to know more about it. Then you got a good title.
Well, how did you come up with your title?
The Human Supremacist?
Yeah.
At first, I had it as, actually, no, I didn't have it as anything else. I knew I would never, if I only came up with photosynthesis or cult or nature cult or something like that, I would have stopped. I would not have made the movie. I wouldn't have gone past the first draft. It really unravels itself, and it's a line in the movie, Human Supremacist, and it's a concept in it that's important. And I feel like it really explains a lot about it. It really picks out some intrigue from the movie, and it's relevant. And it's something, those words together, and that's really, frankly, where the whole idea of the movie came from. I saw the words human supremacy, and I was like, I got a movie. I couldn't fathom that we would put those words, human and supremacy, together. And I was like, there's a movie.
They're like, that's it. Now that's more than one word, though. You said one word title.
It doesn't have to be one word. I think
it could be more than one word.
2 to 4 words, I think, is a sweet spot.
Is two and the also considered a word, or would you be able to those are article enough not to be?
I'll consider the a word.
The is an article.
What? It's an article and a word.
And a word, yeah. It's a word that Benjamin Franklin petitioned to get taken out of the English lexicon.
I did not know that. He's quite brilliant.
It is a useless word, just for that. Because you don't have to say the car. You could just say car. It's implied that it is the car. Right?
I've never thought about it like that. But
yeah.
I wouldn't. Human supremacist versus the human supremacist. I like the human supremacist. I like THS.
Oh, is that what it's called? The human supremacist? Yeah. I thought it was just human supremacist.
No, the human supremacist. That extra,
one person out. Human supremacist. You know? Look, I'm the title guy. Look, I took it out. So I get the belt.
So
Where's my belt?
I'm gonna consult with you going forward on everything. No, after the title, after just a long line, what I like to do is an outline, and I really like to see it, especially now going forward on anything I write, is seeing it in different dimensions. What I mean is, okay, one chapter is comedic, next chapter is dramatic. The next chapter is going to be really short. The next chapter is going to be really long. Literally seeing that. You could even map it out. Oh, this chapter has 1,213 words. Boom. Next one has 574.
8,000. Wait, what?
8,000. Boom. So you're seeing it. You start to
say 574. All right, pause.
Just
Just for anyone listening, that would not be considered a chapter, just for the record. It is not. There's no way it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It doesn't have a conflict. It doesn't have a resolution. It doesn't have motivation. However, if you do write something like that, it might just be considered an interlude, especially if it's indirectly influencing the. I'm just talking to the audience now. If it ended, because sometimes I don't want false information. You can write it like that. That's why you could do a 500 word chapter and call it a chapter. But just for anyone listening, it isn't technically a chapter. A chapter has to have very specific elements to it. But if you're writing a 500 word chapter, that usually would be it would negate the fact that you're writing a long form novel. Only because it's like writing a 9,000 word chapter and then calling it like short fiction romance or something like that would be out of place. Like maybe you should be breaking that chapter up a little bit. Like there's certain, depending on the genres you're writing and stuff like that. But anyway, if you're writing a short story, which I think you're writing a long form story, you're right. You're doing a full length narrative. Then you could almost get away with like short chapters, quote unquote. But I think what you're talking about is pace, though. You're saying that you're trying to create a pace and a rhythm. However, if you make a chapter that is funny, I'm just spitballing now. If you make a chapter that's funny, and then a chapter that's action packed, and then a chapter that's dramatic, and then a chapter that has dubs in it or something like that, is that serving the narrative, or is that sort of just like, hey, I need somebody to know that this character's funny, so I'm going to write a funny chapter? You know what I'm saying? Like what is the purpose of that? I'm just trying to understand it as a technique, because I traditionally wouldn't do that. And what I've learned would say that would actually mess up the pacing, because it would take a reader out, because you can have a book that is dramatic with funny, you know what I'm saying, with romance.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're making a chapter that's just meant to be, this is going to be the funny chapter, and then the next chapter is going to jar them with drama, and then the next chapter will be like horror. Like, I'm trying to understand the process so other people can understand it as well.
Absolutely. So this comes from the more cinematic side. Whereas the best way I can explain it now, it doesn't have to be a very direct pattern where it's comedic, dramatic, or comedic, dramatic. Then it's a horror. It can be any which way.
But what I'm saying is, like, why write a chapter that is comedic? Like, why? Like, I have this book, and chapter 7, arbitrarily, is going to be the comedic chapter. Like, why do that? Like, why are we just choosing a chapter, and that's going to be the chapter that's going to be?
Well, it should always, the way I see it, it should always drive the story forward. So it's not just comedy in a case like this, hypothetically, for the sake of comedy. But the way I see it, it's always important to consider micro macros. This is something that was big in THS, talking with Evan. The best way I can explain is, now, if there's a shot, we're going through it, editing, and pick a close.
We're talking about a book. We're talking about a book.
Yeah. But the best way to understand, the best way I can explain it is in movie terms here. Okay, so if you look at a close up, you're like, wow, that's a great shot.
Yeah. That's not a different tone.
What are we going to cut to? A close up.
Yeah, but that's you're not talking about tone right now. You're talking, so in novels, if you're talking about shots, like a close up, a mid, a master, a setup, an insert, a B, right? That is not tone. What you're talking about is tone. When you're like, this chapter will be comedic, when you're talking about shots in a scene, If you go closer, now you're going to slow it down and slow the pace to become breathing, and it's going to become immersive, and we're going to work through the emotions. The further we pull back, the more action we see, and the less intimate it is. That's when you're talking about shot in novels. But what you're talking about, and what I'm specifically asking, so I can understand it, and so the audience can understand, is why are you saying that this chapter, doesn't matter, it could be any chapter, is going to be comedic, and this chapter is going to be dramatic, and this chapter is going to be thriller? Because that has to do with tone. That would be as if you filmed a scene with all the cuts in the scene. And that scene is really funny. But then literally the next scene after that is somebody getting murdered.
Yeah.
And it's filmed dark and like the shadow. And that would be the comparison right now that I'm trying to understand. Like, what would be the narrative purpose of dictating a tonality to a chapter?
So where I was going with that with the close-ups, because I have to finish that, or else.
That is a different topic, but let's finish it.
Yes.
Go
so
for
if you only look at it in the micro, where a close-up, you edit, you cut to a close-up, every single close-up is good. You say, wow, it's a wonderful acting, editing. If you did, let's just embellish, the whole movie was close-ups. You'd be like, well, if I just looked at each close-up, that was great. But in the overview, the movie wasn't good because they just kept going. There was no contrast. Isn't the only important thing in art, but you don't need contrast. But you have to consider the whole thing at a bird's eye view. That's where I was getting at with it. So you have to look at.
I still don't understand the close-up because that has nothing to do with tonality.
Oh no, it doesn't. It just has to go. It just was my way of explaining, understanding an overview of your whole novel. So you see
let me clarify. So what you're saying is, just because it's a comedic chapter does not mean we are looking at the macro of it by going, what does that comedic chapter do in the totality of the full novel? Which brings me back to the question, why? Because I'm trying to understand. I'm not judging anything. I just want to understand. Why would like chapter 5 be, this is going to be the comedic chapter. Chapter 8 is going to be the dramatic chapter. Chapter 13 is going to be the thriller. Chapter 1 is going to be the romance chapter. Like, why? What is that choice? I'm trying to understand that choice. That has nothing to do with the macro explanation, like how these chapters work as a unit. I'm just trying to understand why the drastic tonal changes. What is the purpose? Because it's like saying, I have a character, and that character is really good with guns. So I'm going to create a chapter where it just gets to showcase him being good with guns. And I have another character who's very funny. So I'm going to write a chapter that showcases him being very funny in that chapter. And it's like in writing, screenplay or otherwise, even in a novel, that character should be funny. And that character should be good with the guns. And there shouldn't be a scene that's dedicated to a trait. Scenes and movement or chapters or whatever beats should be dedicated to the narrative movement, not the character traits. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not Zack Snyder here, you know? Like, we shouldn't be like, you know, it'd be cool if he was drinking and he threw the bottle down and then water splashed up and he's on the rocks. Like, that doesn't do anything, right? So I'm trying to understand. And again, this is not a judgment. You're saying something that is confusing to me. So I need to understand so I can have empathy and relate to it. And maybe people will learn something from it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what is, again, the purpose of dedicating a chapter, different chapters to different tonalities?
To take the audience on a roller coaster ride. If the entire novel, especially when it's something long, it's different if you're doing, say, but you could even take it down to a short poem or anything like that.
Yeah.
But if you're getting a long form artwork, right, wouldn't want something to be stiff and just, it's the same exact pace throughout. Every chapter was X amount of words, literally, right? Just to embellish, exaggerate there. Whereas like, you knew, oh, it's going to be the same 3 characters in every chapter. It should be, okay, just as an example, right? 3 characters and 10 characters and one. The idea of the roller coaster ride is what I was getting at, and seeing the whole overview of, oh well, here it's the And up there, it's getting through that, and that helps with the keeping them on their toes for the audience.
All right. So you're saying to jolt the audience out of the comfort zone, we're just going to purposefully make this chapter very comedic, slapstick, pratfalls, etc. And then this next chapter is going to be the human centipede out of nowhere. And then the third chapter is going to be a romance novel. We're going to see the romance blossom. And then the fourth chapter is going to be action packed. They're going to be on boats driving between two liners coming closer together. Like, you're just doing it to jar them. But that has nothing to do with pacing, for the record. Pacing is the speed at which information is presented to the audience.
But that there could also be even a ride in that, even as simple as the length of a chapter, the length of a scene.
Yeah, but the length of a chapter isn't necessarily pacing either. Pacing is the speed at which information is presented to the audience, right? So you can have 10,000 words, and that pacing could be quick or it could be slow, but it's still 10,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
The pacing isn't affected by the word count, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And it's also not affected by the pacing of chapters, because I could have 4 chapters that are each 500 words, right? As you say, right? Or I could have 5 chapters that are each 10,000 words, right? But that wouldn't necessarily affect the pacing, because 500 words can feel long and drawn out if it becomes immersively thick or expositionary, right? Expository, right? However, it can be quick depending on the style of the information at which the speed of information is being presented. So I just want to clarify, not for you. You can consider pacing whatever you want. You went to school for this. I just sit in my basement all day. But I do want people to understand as a what pacing actually is, like, because I don't want people to get confused. That's all.
No, you bring up an excellent point there. That if you just get into the numbers of anything, right? Sometimes we want to look at art in particular as something mathematical. I know some people want to do it, and there are benefits to it. Of, oh well, it's X amount of numbers. It's X amount of X amount of words per paragraph. I mean, you could break it down all which ways. We're getting more analytic, it seems, by the year. And then there's some things that get lost, and there's a bunch of nuance to it. Absolutely, that you bring up, that you could have there's some authors that they'll go pages and it's a run-on sentence, and it feels you wouldn't really notice.
You leave Faulkner alone.
If you break it down, you could say, well, you can have a field day with the grammar of it, of course. But you'd say, oh, well, that's slow pace. The amount of words per sentence is feeling off. But if it's depending on the subject matter, depending on the style, you can take it any which way.
But again, pacing isn't like there are 5 words in this sentence and there are 5 words in that sentence. The pacing is affected by the information at which is being presented. So what does that mean? That means, are those 5 words they ran through a door, or are those 5 words paused in their contemplation, sitting in the agony, right? Like, that's a different pace. One moves us slowly through the experience, while the other one gets us through the experience. And it's the same thing with exposition. If the exposition was he has a gun, or beneath his jacket, there was a bump beneath his jacket and only the handle stuck out, that becomes slower pace. So it's not necessarily the word count per se. It is how you are moving through that word count that creates the pace. And again, I'm not trying to teach you. I'm trying to inform the audience, because this is a learning channel for writing. Again, I'm just saying, I'm not an expert. I've only known this for 37 years. But like, you can think of pacing however you want, Pat. I'm not trying to change your way of what you believe pacing is. I just want, this channel tries to adjust misconceptions or misinformation. Right. However, that doesn't mean you are wrong if that's how you approach quote unquote pacing. But as this is an educational channel. It's like if I was like, you know, what is urgency? And you go, oh, it's what colors you use. I'd be like, that's great. And then I'd have to explain what urgency is. You wouldn't be wrong because that's how you connect to urgency.
Totally what colors you use, yeah.
Or agency. I mean, that's all. But please don't take offense to when I ramble on. It's me actually trying to make sure that the listener is walking away with, certain information. So,
God, yeah, ramble on some more, man. Bring it on.
I didn't go to school. I'm a high school dropout, so yeah, don't take my word for it.
Did Shakespeare go to college?
Who knows? I don't even know if he was real. I don't know to be or not to be.
I think a lot of people think he was a character in a sense, in the same way that late night talk show hosts are characters. It's not that they're literally, it's not that they're imaginary, that they don't exist, but the way we perceive them, they have a writing staff. So it's not like those jokes are all from them. That's what some people think about Shakespeare.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about William Shakespeare or his family that he had with twins, and that he owned an actual town at one point because he had so much money he would send back to his family, and ultimately, but like in the Rose Theater and stuff like that. I don't really know his history, but all I do is I just have conversations with writers that I just want to understand. I just want to understand things. But it was just saying stuff that was just kind of like, what is he saying? Like I needed to understand. I was confused.
Got
it. All right. So so you do a log line, you do a title. Then if those two things work for you, you write a draft. Oh no, you outline. You said you outline. So what are you outlining? How do you approach outlining? Other than like, I'm going, this chapter is going to be comedy. This like you don't actually outline like that, right? You don't go,
no,
I need a comedy I need a comedy chapter. I need a erotic chapter.
No, for me, how I start typically is I have a very early chapters, the beginning of a story and the end, and it's normally finding a way to make them meet in the most climactic way, in the most
erotic
it's really gonna connect. But those are the things that just tend to hit me, like, oh, okay, I know how it's gonna start, how it's gonna end. Very end, it could be the last word, whatever it may be.
So what is an outline to you, though? Like when you say outline, I'm just trying to I'm trying to understand, because you said we're talking about outlining, and what you're saying, I just want to understand what outlining is to you, so I'm on the same page.
Yeah,
no pun
I
intended.
use it in a very vague sense. So for me, a synopsis of the whole thing. Once I can get that, characters, a character list. If I can get a good character description, especially on the protagonist, getting that, their kind of way of speaking as well, and then from there, taking down all the locations that come across in the story, and then all those just little knickknacks that come a part of the story, and then really get into the fun part. You wanna I don't want to say you want to brush through an outline. In my case, some people will just go right. They don't even know where the story's going, and that can work well.
Yeah, they are pantsers. They write intuitively, as they say. They're gardeners, whereas I'm an architect or a outliner. I'm a plotter. I'm somebody that I'm a mechanic writer. I get in there and I use mechanics, and I work through I try to find the truth of their emotional purpose, their positions, things like that, and then I write through their cause and effect, right? But there still should be, like, even as a pantser, somebody's writing off the hip. They are writing towards something. They have an idea, like, but unless you're Stephen King, then you're like, I don't know what's going on. Let me just throw a monster in the room. And then he's like, how do I get these people out of there? But again, it allows the characters to have choices, to have moments to have agency, and to proactively figure out, solutions and stuff like that. But so when you talk about outlining, you're writing a synopsis, more or less. You're writing, like, what is the story going to be, and less about beat for beat or quote unquote plot point to plot point. You're really just, what's the broad quote unquote narrative going to be? Because that's what a
broaden it.
synopsis is, really. It's just
Yeah,
overview.
yeah, and then from there, if I depending how I feel about it, how well I can envision every single, let's say, plot point, so to speak, then I can say, oh yeah, I mean, I can just take it from there. Like, no, I need to be a little more specific for myself. That I can always track. Oh yeah, here, this is what I had months ago. Things can get forgotten. That's a big thing. Now I've been way bigger into writing down every single idea, whether I'm not going to use it or not,
Yeah.
because you never know when that can just hit you with inspiration, or just it was like, oh, this is one specific moment, and there's one line, this one sentence that needs to be written. I don't know where something. It's like
Where'd it go?
yeah, and
Stephen
being
King famously said, he goes, I like to linger on an idea, and then after a couple days, weeks, or months, if it vanishes, then it wasn't a good idea. He goes, if it stays with you, it's something that was worth writing. I don't necessarily agree with that statement, because you could always take crap and shine it into something nice, because even a diamond started as coal. But it is an interesting way to approach it, where it's like, I forgot. I have a photographic memory, so I get to cheat a little bit. But, but at the same time, I do understand what you're saying, where it's like, you got to play it, you got to write it down. And that's why some people have notebooks, they have their phone, and they'll just write it in their phone, whatever the case may be. All right. So after you outline, when do you start writing? Like, when do you get down the first couple words, or do you map out your chapters? Do you like figure out what your chapter before you start like writing long form prose or dialogue and stuff like that? Do you do a little dig deeping, or do you just go right in with a zero draft per se?
I normally have to have a pretty good outline to get anything, but sometimes I'm just so eager. I'm like, I have to even do a little test of myself. Like, let me get one page and let me like step back, give it a day, whatever it may be, and take a look. Like, okay, was I achieving what I was trying to achieve? And then you can take it and then kind of hit the outline again.
Yeah, yeah. You
And
got
see
to
it from
adjust. You got to be malleable, as they say, right?
yeah,
Uh,
it's super malleable because but that's part of the beauty of it, that what you thought, it can turn into something that you didn't even imagine in the beginning. It was going to be it was going to be this tone, and then you find out that you weren't necessarily fulfilling what you were trying to do, but it could be way better going in a totally different style. I think just getting some little micro writing in can really flesh that out and reveal
are you
itself.
are you basically saying like happy little accidents, right? Like allow
Yeah.
the happy
Well,
little accidents
those
to
I think
manifest.
some of the best works of art include a lot of spontaneity to it, a lot of ooh, what's the word in here? Oh my gosh, it's on the tip of my lengua.
Well, Jackson
What's those-
Pollock, right? He it was a mistake. He just was like, he dropped paint on the ground in his like his studio, and then was like, oh, that's something. And you're like,
Serendipity.
what?
Serendipity. That
Oh,
was the word.
serendipity,
That was
a
the
happy
word I was
mistake.
looking for. There's a lot of great things that come from serendipity.
Yeah. You know what's funny about Jackson Pollock though? His wife was an amazing and well renowned artist in her own right, but like because he's who he is, like she was just like, who? His wife? You know?
That tends to happen, unfortunately. There's
Yeah,
a
but
lot.
he was also a drunk. He died. He crashed his car, I think, if I remember correctly. He crashed his car while drinking and driving.
And that's a great name, Jackson Pollock.
Yeah. That's what happens. My bathroom looks like that. So, my sheets. At my age, it's not what you think. It's crap yourself just by sneezing. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, you'll get there. What are you 18, 19?
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm already old. I'm already dead.
Depending on my passport.
What?
Depending on which passport I got.
What are you, Peruvian? What are you, Peruvian?
Bolivian-American. No,
Oh,
but
Bolivian.
that is Machu Picchu actually back
Oh,
there.
nice.
Yeah.
Machu Picchu. So all right. Well, this is your first novel you're working on, correct? This is the one where you're like, next year it'll be done. So you've never, and by the way, this is not a knock. I'm just gonna work through the thought.
Okay.
You've never written a novel, so this is like a new adventure for you. What was the first thing you personally felt you had to adjust when approaching a narrative for a novel versus, say, a screenplay?
This is the entirety of it. That's the biggest difference. In the screenplay, that is the blueprint. In a way, you could say a script is an outline. Whereas for a novel, you're writing, well, at the very end, once you get to the final draft, that's it. Of course, you got the book cover, you got all those other things.
Yeah, but
That's
what I mean is like your approach. Like, what was the change in like, because you were like, I'm going to write a novel. Did you approach writing the novel the same way you approach writing a screenplay, or was there a moment where you like, am I going to approach this differently? Like, was there? I mean, you could say there wasn't. That's fine too. I just because I had a career. I have a career in both, so I wanted to see. I like to hear if like there's different approaches for other people as well.
I would just say it's way more meticulous because you're already working on that final meal in
Oh,
every
that's
draft,
interesting. Yeah.
getting to it. So that's why this outline is way more in depth than anything for a cinema, for a movie
Yeah.
script that I've had to do. Just getting really into the weaves of it.
I mean,
That's the main thing, and just there's always a voice. I feel like there's gonna be there's Paulo Perez in my works, in movies, and you're gonna hear that same voice. It's just a different format. In that sense,
yeah.
keeping the same. And
Yeah, I like to deep dive outline on both, mostly because when clients hire me for screenplays or novels, they want to know what the outline is going to be before word one gets written, just so it's easier to adjust, summarized beats or like, whatever the case may be. But, writing, people think writing is words. I talk about that a lot on my channel where like writers are like, well, I'm a writer. I write words, but words are actually not what makes a writer. Have you ever heard this? Have you ever heard this philosophy?
no, go into it.
Well, like, for example, anyone can write. Anyone could be a quote unquote writer, right? Because I could write Thomas met Sarah. That's easy. Thomas met Sarah in a deli, right? Right now, that change between Thomas met Sarah and Thomas met Sarah in a deli. That slight adjustment is what makes a writer. Because a writer's job, their tool, is to create cause and effect. Their tool is to design truthful positions in characters. Their job is to dictate agency and urgency and motivations, right? But anyone could be like, it would be really cool? A guy drinking alcohol, walking away into the water, smashing it on the rocks, and water blows up. There's no motivation there. There's no cause and effect. There's no agency. That's just cool factor. That's what people can do. Anyone could do that. Anyone could write, Aquaman stands on rocks and water blasts up. And they could even write that with the most beautiful words ever. The aqua greens curled over his face, splashing down into the suds of white, revealing Aquaman standing there with his bursting Nothing has happened yet. Right? Because there's a thing in writing. Things are happening, but nothing is happening. And descriptive words and exposition, nothing is happening. Yeah, stuff is happening. We just described it. Water, suds, his bulging chest. Aquaman is there. But a writer, their job is before the words touch the page. So even if you're pantsing, it's how we move through cause and effect that makes a true writer. A writer has the ability to see beyond the pretty words, to see beyond, oh, look at my pro, right? It's all about cause and effect. It's all about character delivery. And if that isn't there on the page, and it's like one of the things I get, like if I get a client and I'm looking at a novel and the opening is, the castle spread across the horizon and its towers reached up high into the clouds of Clatius, right? And standing between its eeriness, the gate fell down over the moat. Nothing has happened. And that is poor writing, and it isn't a writer writing it. And the reason and those words could be pretty, by the way, right? You could be like, those are pretty words. You set the scene. There's atmosphere, but nothing is happening. It's not through the POV of a character. It's not through the emotional experience. Because remember, a narrative, whether screenplay or not, is made up of two things: plot and story. Plot is what needs to happen no matter what. It's going to happen. Thomas must meet Sarah. That has to happen. But story is how it unfolds through the emotional experiences and choices of a character. So, how Thomas meets Sarah and how she reacts to that meeting, and then the cause and effect of that, is the story unfolding. Most people who don't understand writing only write the plot and they fill it with description and exposition, but they're not allowing the characters to move through those experiences and or to make choices. Because Thomas needs to meet Sarah, they'll write Thomas walked into the deli and saw Sarah. She waved over, excited to meet him. He sat down. They discussed the thing. But there's no challenge to that. And writers know how to challenge beats and moments. So I always tell my clients, I go, look, when you come into a moment, let's say, Pap, you walk into a deli. What are 3 things that could happen because you walked into that deli? And out of those 3 things, now you could decide what are 3 choices you make to each of those things. And now you start developing cause and effect. So it's no longer this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened. It's therefore and but, right? You know this, the tripartite, right? Tripartite.
Yeah.
So that's the way to approach moments, so you can create agency, so you can create character. Because character is through behavior. It's through their choices. It's through their positions. And I don't know if you know what position. I know you went to college for writing, but sometimes they don't really teach these things. They just go, let's examine the screenplay. And you're like, right? So, but position is what characters believe or want. So, like, if I'm a Giants fan, that's a position. How much of a Giants fan I am is a position. Do I believe in God or don't believe in God? How much I believe in God, or those become positions. And now you get to challenge those things. And that influences the story. And that, so plot is I still have to meet Sarah, but how I challenge me getting to meet Sarah, that becomes what writing truly is. You know, that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, who is this Sarah chick?
I don't know. But she has beautiful long red hair, nice golden skin, you know, deep yellow eyes. I don't know. She's an alien. Beautiful.
There's cause and effect.
Now, do you think there's a difference between, say, an ant, like a bug, as like a character, or a human? Do you think there is a difference between them?
You can make them different.
I'm asking a very specific question.
Yes, I see. Yes.
Are they different? Okay. What makes them different?
Physiologically, they're different.
Wait, what?
Physiologically, they're
All
different.
Right. And that's what makes somebody who writes versus somebody who is a writer. If you can say that this ant and this person are different, that leans you towards being someone who writes, but not who is a writer. Because writing is not about outside in. Otherwise, A Bug Life wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Lion King wouldn't work. Do you think they wrote them as lion? They're like, what is a lion thinking? No, they wrote them as these truthful characters that have positions. So I like another thing I tell my clients, I go, like, when they come to me, I go, I'm thinking of writing a story and it's going to be like a strong female black lesbian character who is the boss of a CEO, and she rules confidently. And I go, all right, but what is the story about? And you go, oh, no, that is the story. I go, but that's not interesting. Oh yeah, it is, because it's a female, she's a lesbian, she's black, and she's a CEO. Yeah, but that isn't what makes a person. That character had to do a lot of things to discover that they to realize and accept that they were different and not straight, that they were a lesbian. And do they accept that part of life? Great, they do. But what led them to that? Do they embrace that part? Great. What led them to that? How'd they become a CEO? What choices led them to becoming a CEO? Because that dictates their personality, which becomes interesting now, right? And the fact that they're black is not interesting, but how they represent their culture, that becomes interesting. But if you write outside in, you no longer have position. You no longer have the depth. You can't be like, this is an ant, and the ant's name is David, and David is fighting a green grasshopper, and the grasshopper is going to be played by Woody Harrelson or whatever, Ed, whatever his name is, like that isn't what makes that interesting. But Bugs Life was a success. Is it because they were bugs?
No.
No, it's because they had truthful, even though it was for kids, they had truthful presentation. So you one of the greatest lessons I was ever taught was never approach your narratives from the outside in. Always approach from the inside out, and then you can make them anything. They could be aliens.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Opens up writing.
Well, yeah. What I'm saying is like you're not restricted by, like, imagine I was like, all right, I'm gonna make you a character, but like now I'm gonna go, well, Pap, he has dark skin, so what does that mean? Like imagine that's how I wrote it. Like, all right, Pap has dark skin and dark eyes. All right, I got to figure that out. What is the motivation for his dark eyes? Like, what does that mean for him? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no character. That's not, you having dark eyes is not
just attributes.
Yeah. Or even like, oh, he's a funny character. Like, that's still the outside. That's still like a thing. That's a trait. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not developing a character. Like, this one's going to be tough and rough, and this one's going to be funny, and this character right here is going to be this is the smart character, because no other characters could be the smart character, and no other characters could be funny. Oh, I wrote this character, and he made a quip. Maybe I'll just give the quip to the funny character, because that character is supposed, right? That's not writing. That's just writing. That's just anyone could do it. I'm going to make a strong character. I'm going to make a weak character. I'm going to make the female character. I'm going to make the love interest. I'm going to make this. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to add, give me some more X's boxes to match, right?
It's kind of forcing things in.
Maybe they're not even forcing things in. It's just if they approach it where they go, I want a wrestler character who is black. And then they're like, where do you go from there? Like, what is that? Like, that is not interesting. However, they can be black and they can be a wrestler, but that's not what makes them interesting. It's all the other stuff that leads up to them. Why did they become a wrestler then? Right? Like, what got them to this point? It wasn't because they're black.
What kind of wrestler are they? What kind of wrestler is that person?
All right. There's an example of outside in. What kind of wrestler is not interesting?
Well, the position of
no, the position is what led them to become the wrestler that they are. The position is the things that led to that moment, and that becomes the interesting part, right? Like, what kind of wrestler are they? If you think that, then you start going, wait, that's the end result. So let me work backwards to figure out what led them to become that wrestler. Because it's like, if you're like, oh, they're a they're going to be a heel, or they're going to be like a high diver, like, that's not interesting. Again, we're back to, it's just a thing. They do this, they do flips, they're a flipping wrestler. Like, that's not interesting. It could be visually interesting, but again, now we're falling into description, right? But if you could go, what led them to be the high flyer, the acrobatic wrestler? Are they a technical wrestler? Great. What led them? Because now you start creating the positions, you start creating the history, the culture, the purpose of. So when you think of things, the first rule of thumb with writing is, how do I work back to the moments that led to that thing? Because results are not interesting. That makes sense. Yeah, you could obviously disagree with that.
I see what you mean there, of the process of how they got to the journey.
Yeah, it's always the journey, because some people write stories and they forget that there's a life before that story, and there's going to be a life after that story. You know what I'm saying? Like in Alien, Sigourney Weaver's character, she Ripley didn't just appear like, oh, I'm on a ship. Like, she had to get that job, and she had to meet those people, and she had to build those relationships, and she had to whatever the case may be. She wasn't just like, I'm Ripley, you know? So you got to think of those things. Not that you have to have lots of information on. I often say on the channel, like, don't bog yourself down with specific details and grandiose details. Like, you could generalize, and then while you're working on the narrative and you're writing things out, and if you're developing the outline or if you're just jumping right in, you could start developing the specific details of who these people are and how they got there. But it's good to have a broad or general, I should say a more general, like just a broad, like, like they grew up in Mexico, around the high flying acrobatic wrestlers, and they saw their uncles get out of Mexico and into America, and they sent money back, and the way it helped their family establish wealth and get out of the slums inspired them to put their life towards wrestling, and their goal is to do what their uncles did so they can help their family. Now that's interesting, right?
And there's a lot you can get on that.
You can push, you could challenge it, you could have conflicts, they could break a leg, and then maybe they mentor somebody, and then they accomplish, right? So you can do so much with that kind of general broad statement, right? And then you could fill in the blanks as you work on the piece. But that's more interesting than they're an acrobatic wrestler who is Mexican.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, you're going way deeper, and then you extract a lot.
Yeah. Because you'll never, what can you get out of? It's a fox, but with a hat. I once was in a play, and the director said that to somebody who was playing a priest, and the actor was like, what are my motivations here? And the director, who was from Brooklyn, spoke with an English accent, but he was born in Brooklyn. He goes, you're a priest. You have a hat. Work with it. And I was like, that is the worst direction in the world, but at the same time, the best direction in being like, I don't care. You're the actor. Do the work. Like, you should be reading the script. You should be breaking down the script. You should be figuring out your beats, right? I understand where the director was coming from, because, you're working on a Shakespearean play. There's a lot of actors, but at the same time, if you approach writing in the same way, where you're just like, well, he has a hat and he's a priest, that should be interesting enough. Like, it's not. It's just not enough to write a story about, and again, I've had a full career before you were even born, but there are a lot of times in the movie industry where people will come up to me and they go, listen, I have a great movie. And then they'll say something as mundane as, this is a Mexican who becomes a wrestler and he's like acrobatic. And I go, well, that sounds like an idea or a premise, but it's not interesting.
Inherently there.
Yeah.
You can take it any which way.
Yeah, you can't do anything with it. I usually tell them, well, it needs a lot of work. And they go, what are you talking about? You can think about the awesome fights you could have in the wrestling ring. That's not interesting. Oh, it'd be visually interesting. You could do all these, you could get like, and you're like, yeah, but again, I don't care that people are jumping around. Like, it's not like, why are they jumping around? Well, because they want to win their match. Okay, but why do they want to win the match? Well, because they're going to be the champion at the end. Oh, so they're going to, all right. So it's a Mexican wrestler who's acrobatic, and they win every match and they become champion. Yeah, it'll be the story. And he's an underdog because he's lightweight and he's beating all these heavyweights. Still not interesting. What do you mean? That's plot. He has to become champion. That's plot. Narrative without story is just plot, and that's boring. Right?
I totally agree. And that's some to combat, to say the least.
Did I say stuff that made you go, oh, all right, let me see how maybe I should approach narrative differently?
It's been enlightening.
All right, well, that makes me feel good, because that's my goal, is to enlighten people and to see. That's what it says. It says craft, analysis, interviews, and business.
Those are the things. Put a light bulb over my head if you can do that. Flicker on and off. That's right. I can press a button.
Yeah, let's get it. Ding, 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 ding. All right, Miss Pat, we are an hour in, and I like to try to keep these tight. So I'm going to ask you the same question I ask every single guest ever. I'll put it on the screen. I will read it, and then some people, the question seems confusing sometimes. So if it's confusing, do not feel embarrassed to ask for clarification. Okay? I
Got
just
it.
all right. What is the circumference of? Okay. What is one piece of advice you discovered about writing, either through someone else or you doing the research, that completely changed the way you approach the writing process?
You know, it's something we dabbled into just a tiny bit today, but it was hearing that, maybe not the literal process, but just getting whole the whole narrative out, is that it's something that the South Park creators mentioned, is that but or therefore. Whenever you're writing something, that instead of XYZ and ABC and, it should be XYZ but, that there's some conflict, something that prevents something from happening, or it's therefore, it directly leads into. Because if you're just going with the and, you can just get a bunch of scenes. Yeah, you can get events that happen. Yes. It may or may not be interesting. It's probably not going to be interesting. It's probably not going to be effective in communicating all you're trying to get through in any kind of story. If you use the but or therefore, it's really going to draw out. You're going to see the conflict. It's also just going to start writing itself a little bit more. That's been the biggest thing that I found to be helpful. That's really transformed the way I see it. That these things should connect, and it's got to be with a really valid reason, and it's all this prevention. At the end of the day, it's conflict what we're writing.
Yeah, because if you write a line of something XYZ, and then the next line, and they start feeling like statements of action, like, this happened and this happened and this happened. The therefore and but is a great way to just be like, well, because this happened, what happens? Why did he get into a car accident? Well, because he was running late for work and he wasn't paying attention. Therefore, he got into an accident. Yeah. But he was late for work. Therefore, he missed the meeting.
Therefore, he's fired.
Yeah. Or whatever the case is. You could just keep doing that. I do want to, before we go though, let me give you a little bit more, a quick tidbit of knowledge, because, and again, this is not a judgment on you. This is your first novel, so I'm going to give you a little something. All right.
Hit me.
Every single line, every sentence you write, whether narrative or dialogue, must accomplish one or more of these three things: plot, character development, or world building. They must. They can have one, two, or three of them. But if they are not in the sentence, either dialogue or narrative, the sentence is doing nothing and can completely be taken out. What does that mean? It means if it doesn't move the plot forward, and by the way, plot is that things are occurring, not that this sentence is explaining the entire plot. No, it's just that, for example, Thomas walked into the deli is plot, because plot must happen. So Thomas walked into the deli, right? But now if I want to add some character to it, Thomas walked through the deli, right? Now we gotta, what is he noticing? So in that sentence, Thomas grabbed the handle. Its coolness ran through his palm and up his arm, pausing him for a second as he grabbed tight his jacket, jumping out from the cold and into the deli. Now that is plot and character. So world building. Now you got to add world building, right? World building is what? Do you know what world building is?
Building a world.
But specifically, what is it? Is it a building, or is it what the building represents?
It's what it represents, and where you're encompassing this whole.
It's the rules of.
Yes, the rules.
That's the easy way to look at it. So, like the religions, the moment you mention religion, that builds the world because that exists. But if you're like, oh, there are buildings, there are cars, that isn't necessarily world building per se, if it's within our own life. But if there was magic and then a car drove by, that's world building. because it's establishing that magic and technology exists in the world. So if I wanted to turn that sentence into, you know, Tom has grabbed the handle, it's coolness ran up his wrist. He grabbed tight his jacket as the cool air of the northern storms have hit Precisus, whatever the city is, Precisus, as he stepped into the deli to get warmer. Now it's plot, world building, and character. But I don't need all three of those. I can only have one. So every line of dialogue and narrative must contain one or more of those elements to consistently move forward the narrative. So that's a little bit.
I got that down.
Froze. You're gonna write that down. You're gonna write that down.
Yeah, I got that down.
Did you know that? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have heard of that.
Yeah. They do that in screenwriting too, except action is different. Action is movement that is seen on the screen and not necessarily intention. You don't necessarily write, he is sad. Or he pulled cold. He pulled his jacket. Like you don't write prose in action for screenplays. Traditionally, you shouldn't. It's just, what are we seeing on the screen? You know, Pap and Thomas are talking through StreamYard. That is the action.
Great action right there.
Sets it up. You know, you could get a little bit crazy with it. You know, you could describe things, but a lot of people, like, they go too deep, and you're like, if it's more than 4 sentences, a 4-sentence block on action, it's you've already gone too far. You got to break them up to create rhythm for the read. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can't break the rules either, because if you read Quiet Place, they'll, like, a whole page is dedicated to 1, and then the next page is like 2, and the next page says 3 in the middle, and then it's 4, and then like the monster comes out. So, like, you know, you can comes out. Yeah, basically it says he snaps a twig or something in the monster, and then that turns back into like a traditional screenplay, and that helped develop that director's voice, and that's actually what got the eyes caught for that project, because the material was presented with the voice of the writer. Same thing with Anderson. Paul Anderson, a lot of his earlier scripts had a very specific style to it that kind of broke the rules of what formatting, quote unquote, is for screenplays. So once you understand the format, you can break them. Same thing with novels. Like if you're going to do a 500-word chapter, you're breaking the format, but make sure you still are installing the importance of what makes an actual chapter. Like a chapter has elements to it, and if it doesn't have those elements, you know. However, a full sentence could be the word alone. I don't know if you understand, right? Like I could write alone, and that's a full contextual sentence. That's the shortest known sentence in the world, is alone, because it's through POV. It's an expression of emotion. It is the presence of plot, because they are alone, right? So alone. Did you know about the shortest sentence in the world?
No, I didn't know that. More things are here.
Alone. Yeah, that's the shortest sentence in the world. Alone. And it represents a lot. It has character, has depth, it has the world. It doesn't have world building, but it has plot, it has character, has atmosphere, because it's alone. You know, just
very
think about that.
Powerful word right there. Yeah,
very powerful word. So you know, but yeah. Anyway, all right. How do people find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Paulo Pérez 13, spelled like that, PAULO PEREZ 13. PatPictures.com, also my website, production company, and it's going to have information on the movie, the novel, and right there.
Nice. And for anyone who didn't hear him spell that out, it's PAULOPEREZ, and then just the numbers 1 and 3.
1, 3. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, because some people might be listening through the this will be on Spotify and stuff, but it'll also be on my YouTube channel, which you followed, right? You subscribed to my YouTube channel, the Right Mindset. Did we do that?
You know, I have. If I'm gonna get it right now.
I'm doing it right now.
I got the browser before you
nice.
can say banana. I'll be subscribed.
there's a lot of videos on that on my channel that will, if you liked what I had to say about writing, my channel is one of the few channels that actually physically teach writing. Like I do real-time examples, and I do stuff, especially the live stuff and everything. So if you liked my take on writing, I recommend watch, especially the outlining series. That's one of my most popular series, is the outlining series. I teach how to outline, and my live videos get a lot of. There's one funny comment. This is the only comment I like. They wrote, this guy just wrote a masterpiece in under an hour, and he says anyone could do it. Because I outlined the story from scratch in an hour, and but I was teaching like how outlining works, and I did it in an hour, and he's like, but anyone could do it, and it was just a very funny comment, very funny. So,
what'd you do with that outline?
It's up there. It exists. You could watch the video. It's
just out there in the ether.
Yeah. I make up stories all the time when I'm doing outlining, because I don't. It's more. I want people to learn how to do it, and stuff like that. Because another thing I talk about on my channel a lot is, like, if I gave you an outline, and then I gave like 3 other writers the same outline, the stories would be different. The plot would be the same, but the stories would be different. And because remember, it's narrative is plot and story. Story is how it unfolds through the emotion, and that's up to you. That's the part that makes you a writer, is the story. It's how the plot unfolds through the emotional experiences and choices of the characters, and you get to choose that. That's your part. But the plot no matter what, the plot must happen. But the way you challenge the characters and the way they react to things, that's your voice as a writer. So, I just do them, and I leave them up there, and then they could take them if they want or whatever, because they'll never be what I write, and they shouldn't be, right? But I don't show people like how I write on those outlines. It's just outlining. And there's a few of them up there. I did a 5-hour one once, and people watched it.
I swear those are the best. Those ones where you go like super in depth. I'll be watching.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I hope you get something.
What's the name of that 5-hour one?
It should be. Actually, I'll give myself a plug. If you're on my channel and you haven't seen it yet, you gotta go here, and then you hit content. All right. Under the live videos, it's the live videos, and then it's gonna be the come outline in real time with me using the 27 plot point outline. And it's like pink and everything, pink and orange and purple. I had a lot of fun doing that one. The one that I was telling you about is the alien one. That's the one somebody was like, he wrote a masterpiece in an hour. And where's that one? That's where is that one? Aliens. Where is it? Brainstorming? No. Oh, maybe this is it. Oh, yeah. 27 chapter outlining plot points in real time. Alien invasion story. That one has 3,900 views already and 168 likes and 2 dislikes. It's exciting.
We need haters though to keep us.
I like the haters. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I don't have many dislikes. I have
I'll add a couple.
Yeah. Cue it up. Fun. All right, my friend. Thank you so very much. I appreciate you coming in. I'm glad that Gabby introduced us. This was fun.
Yeah.
Again, I hope you didn't take any offense to what I was. I just, it's just the way we work on this channel. It's never an attack. It's, I love what you had to say.
I can take it.
All right, good. That's how we learn. That's how we learn.
Gabby.
What?
All right. No, I was saying, what's up, Gabby?
Oh, what's up, Gabby? With that said, hey, everyone who's keep watching. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay, ready? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza. You are watching and listening to The Right Mindset, and Paulo Pérez, also known as Pap, it was the guest today, so thank you very much for that. And as always, keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye.